Just a quick video on some of the experimentation I'm doing or about to do on a Hobie Revolution 16 pedal kayak. I've been fascinated by the Mirage Drive for years and years. Ignore all of this, I'll talk all about that in a minute. Basically it converts a push-pull motion of the feet to a flapping motion of the of these which twist. So if you look along that, you can sort of see the twist that it performs each stroke. So if you imagine it's like two propellers or two single-bladed propellers that are only moving a small distance. Now, different people say different things about this. Some people think that because you're changing the direction of the motion every stroke, that's somehow inefficient. However, it's got the great advantage of, unlike a bicycle to a propeller, virtually every part of the stroke that you're using the maximum strength of your legs. It's sort of cherry picking the most powerful physiological part. It's actually, I mean, don't be sort of misled by the pedals. It's not a pedaling motion, it's more like a single leg press repeated. As you can see, it's just a straight push, which takes away the inefficiency of having to rotate your legs, which works well with a bicycle because you've got the flywheel effect of the ground and the weight of the bike. But anyway, I'm very interested in it. I've got a background in lots of boats. I've done lots of competitive rowing and competitive paddleboard racing and things like that, and I'm just interested to get some data off it and see whether it can be improved. There's a few ways straight away that I think it could be improved. First of all, if you look at the sort of shoes that you would typically wear for a boat like this, because you've got to wade into the water, I find that my foot sort of is wrapping round like that, sort of curling round with toes curling off the end and the rest of your foot kind of bending every stroke. It's sort of doing this, your whole foot, which I can't help thinking probably takes away a bit of the efficiency. So very simple modification. I'm just going for these, they look a bit like unpleasantly hard flip-flops, but there you see the holes. I've had to take the hit of drilling a couple of holes in the pedal surface. Obviously there's little toe straps that go onto these parts here. They'll be going back on, but obviously that doesn't bend. That's a little piece of wood reinforced and vacuum bagged with fiberglass mat both sides, so it's not going to bend at all, or if it does, it'll not be measurable. So I'm going to make that little change, see whether that, I don't think it'll improve speed, but I think it will improve comfort and therefore the sort of range that one's able to go. In order to find out whether any of these changes are working, I've got to get some numbers on it, and I need speed through the water. I mean, a GPS would be a very cheap way of getting speed over the ground, but it's very tidal here, and you'd never know whether an improvement you made was due to a change you'd made, or whether you just hit a little bit less tide or a little bit more tide in your direction. So I've done a separate video on how to get this Nielsen Kellerman stroke coach. They're typically used for rowing boats. You can see the wiring kit there and the magnets and stuff from my old single scull that I used to have this on. I've got a separate kit for this to set it up in here. I've also had this set up in things like on stand-up paddleboards and things like that, because it's, you know, I'm a firm believer in getting that actual speed through the water. Used as an impeller, but I've done a separate video on how I got it all working. But I'm quite pleased with coming up with this, because obviously it means that the impeller can be one of the problems with impellers. It's not a problem with a boat like that comes out of the water onto your shoulder, because it only weighs 15 kilos, but a boat like this that weighs a lot and uses a little trolley and goes up the beach, it's good to have an easy system of lifting it. So I've got it all worked out for that. One of the other things I've wanted to test for years. I've tested it before, but I've never put numbers on it, is using hand power as well. You can see how the hands just pull around these blocks to these little carabiners. I've put carabiners on here so that the Mirage Drive can still be easily removed from the boat, because that's important to be able to get that out at night and stuff. So yeah, so we can test all of these things. We can test, you know, is arms and legs faster than legs alone. There's always people have found that with human powered vehicles, they've found that using a hand cycle at the same time as legs, it just overpowers the cardiovascular system. So although theoretically it sounds like it would be faster, it puts so much load on the heart and lungs that it's not sustainable. So yeah, we'll see how it goes on. I've put these adjustable, you can see that these are just very light carbon tubes. I've got some cheap foam bicycle grips, which are the most sort of squidgy and comfortable I could find. And this actually moves through the tube, so that you can change the angle, because think of getting the angle of the wrist right. So now it's not going to be like that, it's not going to be 90 degrees, it's going to be sort of more like that. But it's, and also the length of adjustment. Do you want the handle to be here by your sort of shoe at the median, so it's almost like pulling a boot on every time? Do you want to cross them so that you're pulling with the left arm as you're pushing with the right leg, and vice versa? I think my gut feel is you want them the same side, so you're literally, it's almost like I say, sort of pulling a boot on. That arm and that leg push and pull against each other, so you're not trying to sort of rotate yourself out of the seat. But we'll find out. It might not work. In case it doesn't work, I've not drilled the boat at all. I've just got some, I covered the front of the bow of the boat in some old sort of cellophane plastic, and then used this piece of off-cut carbon fibre, and then just used microfibres and West System to get all the angles right. It was all taped down, all of this. Removed it, obviously it now conforms to the boat, and I then replaced it with some nice trim tape, double-sided tape that you hold number plates on cars and stuff like that. So it's actually very strong. In order to stop it just getting pulled off first pull, I've got these sort of guy lines to the bow. If it works, I don't mind actually putting a couple of holes in the boat, and I'll drill the boat for it. But I think there's a chance it might be a complete failure, this part of the operation, so I don't want to drill the boat until I find out that it actually sort of works. So I've got a few other things. I've got a few hydrodynamic changes to make to the actual fins, and I've done some slight gearing changes that are a bit different from how it's specified by the manufacturer on the fins. But again, it's all movable back to how it was as standard. So I can test everything. I can test it standard, just as it is. I can test paddling. Obviously, some people have paddled with a standard kayak paddle as well as using the pedals. Maybe that would be more efficient than my handles and these pulleys. These pulleys, by the way, are ball bearing ones, just to make it as efficient as possible. These cross, which is annoying. I only had a double. This is all just out of a spares box. I only had a double block for this. If it works, then I'll replace these with singles here at exactly the right width apart for the cranks, so that these won't actually cross. They don't actually strike each other, but it's pretty inelegant. But we'll see. Something I've wanted to do for a while, so we'll just see whether any of these improvements make any difference. Here we are with the flip-flop things in position, all attached on, with the normal Hobie straps. Maybe a water safety implication with this, so need to make sure. I think these straps are designed so that you can twist your foot off the paddle if you capsize. I would have thought that the heel would twist easily out of those heel cups, but we'll have to see. Hopefully I can work out a way of doing it that's safe. Just a quick note, obviously, if I'm using hands and legs at the same time, how am I going to actuate the steering? This is the steering sort of tab lever here. Obviously you could easily just drop this, it would stay roughly where you put it, and you could quickly tweak it. Normally it stays where you put it, the steering, and then doesn't need constant attention. But I'd prefer to have some method of actually steering and paddling at the same time. So here's one that I've used in the past, and this is just a thumb steerer. It's adjusted from a grip shift off a mountain bike, and it's just a push-pull cable. And as it just attaches on the end of the carbon fibre pole, and this little piece here is just to give you enough leverage, and you move it with your thumb and just click it either way. I've got a system from an old boat that I had set up for steering in the past, but obviously it's easily adaptable. There's even probably a threaded hole in there for attaching something on. You can easily see how it's done. Having said that, I think the more elegant way of doing it is another way that I've thought of, which is hydraulic steering with syringes. So it's just a couple of 10mm syringes and some car washer tubing just for your windscreen washers. There's a lot of air bubbles in this at the moment. You have to mess around for quite a bit getting all the bubbles out of it. This just comes straight out the garage, but you can sort of see how it works. And basically there's very little power loss. Obviously fluid's not particularly compressible, so it basically powers as much power, and it pushes and pulls as well, I hasten to add, like that. So it's easy to sort of work out how that could push and pull the steering tab as well. But I'm not worried about that. I want to see whether there's a speed improvement first, for which I don't really need much steering, and if there is, then I can worry about the steering.